Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Ricky with TechBud Solutions. I hope that you guys are all having an amazing Sunday. Today it is September 29th, 6:49 p.m., and we are live. I'm here coming from sunny Arizona and wanted to make sure that we quickly talk about what's to come this trading week. I just wanted to break down some of the top stocks that you guys see value in. So all I literally ask you to do is, if you guys would like me to break down your top stock, just share it in the live chat. You do have to be subscribed to the channel. And if you feel like you learned something new, hopefully you can consider dropping a thumbs up. So without further ado, again, if you want me to break down your stock, just feel free to share it in the live chat. And I just want to quickly talk about where the market's at as of right now before you guys start sharing your ticker symbol. So very quickly, SPY, right? So SPY is the S&P 500 ETF. And then we have QQQ. So very similar setup, both extremely bullish on the larger time frame. We're clicking on the 4-hour time frame. We could see that we're trading above EMA, trading above moving average, but most importantly, price action showing signs of higher highs, higher lows. Recently pulled on back. So again, it's still in a ascending uptrend channel. So what I would be looking for is, okay, asking this week, are we going to sell off? What would confirm a potential sell-off? Well, looking at last time, right? So when this thing is indicating signs of an uptrend, it holds above the EMA. When there's a potential reversal or sell-off happening, we could get the break below the EMA line and therefore progress on the downside, right? As long as we're holding above, there's progress on the upside. If we get the break below, then again, it begins to act as a resistance. The lower highs, the lower lows, that's what I would be looking for. As long as we hold above the EMA on the 4-hour time frame, then price action should still be bullish, right? In favor for the bulls. It should be, therefore, in our best interest to just go with the trend. Market's bullish. Let's go long, right? But if we do begin to sell off, begin to test the EMA, and begin to show signs of some selling pressure, then at that point, I could potentially enter a short. Now, again, if you don't like shorting, this is where you would essentially just stay cash and wait for the market to sell off at oversold levels where you can load up at a much cheaper price and make money when the market recovers. I want to remind you, markets are more bullish than they are bearish. So if you don't feel comfortable shorting, please do not feel like you need to, right? Never be afraid to hold back and not put yourself in a position in which you don't feel like you are ready to tolerate. On top of that, what's to come this week? If you guys go to techbudsolutions.com under trading tools, one of the quick things that you guys will come across is kind of the overall economic schedule for the week. So tomorrow, September 30th, the last trading day of the month, for the month of September, you could see the series of reports that we have, prepped. When it comes down to Tuesday, it's going to be October 1st. We have JOLTS, which are job openings. Normally, job openings weren't always a really big focus. Now, and again, that's just my opinion, but I feel like job openings are almost more important than inflation reports because the Federal Reserve has inflation under control. It's really more of how is the labor market doing, and that's what the job openings is going to tell us. Or give us a little bit of a better insight of what to expect for Friday, because Friday we have private or non-farm payrolls and we have the unemployment rate that's going to be released. Market's expectation is 4.2%. Previous reporting was 4.2%. So again, I know that the Federal Reserve is taking things meeting by meeting, and they are going to be paying very close attention to see if inflation is going up. If unemployment is going up or down. Remember, Jerome Powell said that they do not want unemployment to rise more than 4.4%. We're already at 4.2. So we will see month in, month out to see if we actually end up experiencing a higher or lower rate of unemployment. So very excited to follow up when it comes down to those series of kind of like labor market economic reports. But other than that, nothing too significant planned for this week. If we look at overall NASDAQ futures, they are down a little bit. They're down 0.06%, but it's so minute that it really doesn't matter because market doesn't open until nearly 12 hours from now. So by that time, the market can still sell off even more or actually begin to recover and we can open up in the green. Remember, whatever happens right now leading up to pre-market doesn't really matter. It's how the market opens and how the market continues to trade. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in our live trading session. And if you want to tune on into our live trading session, it's the second link in the description down below. You can sign up tonight and you can watch me trade live as soon as tomorrow. So without further ado, I want to make this video this live stream super straightforward and very easy to follow. So if you have a top stock that you would like me to break down, please just share it and I'd be more than happy to break it down for you. So Let me go ahead and start with a few that are already being shared in that live chat. So again, you do have to be subscribed to the YouTube channel to partake in that live chat. Yeah, that's actually a really good question. So if you guys haven't heard the news, so Ray, you can see that he's asking, Ricky, do you think that the port strikes can affect the market? We'll see. I do not know. Normally, for those logistic companies, possibly, or those transport or shipping companies, possibly. But other than that, I can't imagine that it's going to influence the entire market as a whole, but definitely possibly have an influence, and that could be a factor that we begin to pay attention to tomorrow. If you don't know what he's talking about, feel free to look it up. You guys could Google search port strikes. That's happening more on the East Coast, if I'm not mistaken. So definitely something to be paying attention to, and I'm very glad that you brought it up. It means that you're paying attention and always asking the question, well, how will this affect the market, right? Let's go ahead and break down the first one. So the first one that I see that's being asked a lot about is MU, which is Micron Technologies. Do you guys remember we talked about it last week? The reason I talked about it last Sunday is because it was about to report earnings. Now, I'm not going to pretend like I knew that this thing was going to skyrocket. I didn't, because if I did, then I would have purchased it, right? And it gapped up about 15%. It's now testing previous highs, and it does offer some pullback potential. That's all I want to pay attention to. I want to see that if and when it begins to pull on back, that it holds, that it doesn't sell off as low as it did before. And that's normally what we want to see when something is showing signs of steady progress. If this thing gaps up, but then all it does, it sells right back off, at that point, it's showing signs of weakness. But if it pushes up just like it did, it pulls back a little bit, holds its ground, and forms higher highs, then at that point, it's showing signs of an ascending uptrend pattern. The example that I can give you is kind of like when it pushes up, pulls back a little, consolidates, and then it makes new highs. It pulls back, consolidates a little bit. It doesn't go as low as it did before. So this is an ascending support, right? It's like this upward staircase pattern. It's kind of jumping up each time, and each time that it does pull on back, pullbacks are part of the process, but it never goes as low as it did before, because if it does, and at that point, again, it's showing signs of weakness, that there's more selling pressure than buying pressure, and then at that point, it would return back to previous highs. But no, there's enough demand at these levels that it does correct itself a little bit. It builds enough demand and then begins to recover and continues that move forward. Now, when we get that break of pattern, the break below EMA, break below moving average, the lower highs, lower lows. So this is why we're a little confused now. Okay, now we gapped up. We're above EMA. We're above moving average. Now what's going to happen? Are we going to pull on back and hold and not make the same lows? Or are we just going to sell off? That's the question, and that's the focus that I would personally have with MU. But you feel free to let me know what you think. Ricky, what's your opinion on GME options for Friday? I view GME to be a pump and dump. I know that there's been a lot of hype because there's been these supposed whales that are paying a lot of attention to GameStop. I'm not big on GameStop other than anytime that it shoots up, I like to short it. Because it has a 100% fill rate. That being said, it's doing a really good job holding here. We'll see. We'll see if it begins to skyrocket or if it loses its hype once again, hits a resistance, and sells back off to $19 per share. That's really just it, right? There's no reason to overcomplicate this, because we know that if the demand or the hype ends up fading, GME is always good at one thing, and that's consistently selling off and going back down to previous lows. You could look at every previous high. It rallies, it corrects itself. It rallies, it corrects itself. Rallies, corrects itself. Rallies, corrects itself. Rallies, corrects itself. It's trying to rally. We'll see if it holds. But last time, it corrected itself once again, right back down to that $19 to $20 support range. All right, we've done about 2 so far. So again, if it's not too much to ask, just drop a thumbs up and share your top stock in that live chat. Appreciate it. Boeing has been struggling. I personally really like Boeing as a potential long-term play, right? Warren Buffett has this notorious or very famous quote of buy when people are fearful and sell when people are greedy. Now, who's to say that Boeing can't go lower? It definitely can. That should never be I don't think it can. Yes, that should never be a question if it can. A stock can always go lower, right? But understanding that it's, well, what's this is where you take reward versus risk into consideration. You could plug it into your risk to reward ratio calculator and begin to ask yourself, well, what's your intention? If you're trying to make money right now, this would probably not be a stock that I would consider buying because it's not indicating signs of growth. But if I'm someone that wants to invest for the future, if I'm someone that can tolerate the time that Boeing might need for it to recover, then this might be something that I could either add to my watch list, take a small position in, and then add more when direction becomes more favorable. But I do have to say, with how much it has sold off, it does make it a very interesting and very attractive stock to pay attention to. I mean, again, it offers huge return, right? Nearly 70% from current lows to previous highs. But who's to say that it has to return to previous highs? But even then, right? It's kind of like asking, okay, well, what's the downside potential? Maybe we do have a little bit more room based off of previous lows. Maybe I want to stay patient and buy closer to the 120 or 130 instead of the 150. Or if you're good at managing your position size, then again, and you can tolerate the time it might take, then again, it's just all about what you could stomach. Every trader, every investor is different, and this is why you will always hear me share my opinion, but you will never hear me tell you what you should do, because we all tolerate risk and see value in different ways. So I want to make sure that you are aware of that. But I'm very glad that we're at least having the conversation and talking about stocks that could be of value. And I think that's the thing. It's just worth the conversation. It's not that you have to agree with me or that I have to agree with you. It's that, hey, wow, this is Boeing. It's coming off of a pretty aggressive sell-off. Technically, news hasn't been better for Boeing with every freak accident and every unfortunate whistleblower incident. Like, it's bad light for Boeing. So things can get worse before they get better, but it's at a fair price where, again, if my intention is to invest for years, I could see why I could potentially want to invest in Boeing at $150 per share. It definitely can go cheaper, but this is where I just have to manage my position size and take that into consideration. So you guys let me know what you think. Ricky, what are your thoughts on Nike and the new CEO? I did hear about that. I don't know enough about it to have an opinion, so it could be something that we can circle back on once maybe I take a little bit more time to read about. Maybe if you're a part of LPP, I can talk about it during one of our live trading sessions this week, but you're going to have to give me time to read more about it. So SMCI, I'm very glad that you brought that up. SMCI. Who else paid attention to SMCI this week? Anyone? Can I get a show of hands? Who else paid attention to it? SMCI. Anyone else? I've never felt like Nancy Pelosi before. I don't know if you guys know what I mean, but SMCI was a stock that I shared with my LPP team. It was brought up to me during our live trading session on Thursday. And then I saw a specific pattern, I shared it, and then just a few minutes later, it started to tank. I had like 200 shares shorting it. I kept thinking back, man, imagine if I had like 1,000 shares shorting it. I would have made six figures in a very short period of time. It's always that what if, but I've never had an experience like that where I expected to make 2 or 3%, and I ended up making like 8 to 10% because of how aggressive it sold off. So I think this week is going to be very interesting. If you guys haven't heard the news, the reason it tanked so much, it's because it's being investigated. So we'll have to see if things get worse before they get better, or if, again, the bad news begins to fade, then maybe it can begin to recover. So all I'm going to be paying attention to, especially with something this volatile, is I'm not really going to be paying attention to indicators. All I'm going to be paying attention to is price action. Is this thing indicating signs of an uptrend, or is this thing showing signs of progress on the downside? That is all I want to pay attention to with this, because I really believe that's where the money is going to be made, because it's so significant based off of how relevant this news is. And again, I'm very definitely during tomorrow's live trading session, this will be something that I talk about, not necessarily that I need to trade, but again, if the opportunity presents itself, there's huge upside potential for a recovery, but there's also huge downside potential if it does continue to sell off. So I'm very excited to follow up. So what are your thoughts on CMG? Let's go ahead and do two more stocks, and then we will call it a live. So I know CMG sold off, right, because Starbucks stole the CEO originally. We tanked down to previous lows. But overall, CMG tends to be a pretty bullish company. Again, it's all about what you can tolerate. It recently pulled back down to the moving average. If you see potential in this thing to recover on the technical side, that's one thing. But I feel like when it comes down to something like Chipotle, you're not going to just want to look at technicals when it comes down to an investment. You're going to want to do your due diligence on the fundamentals. So what's the guidance for up and coming quarters? How have they been doing when it comes down to their earning reports? Because that will ultimately determine if it continues to rally or begins to sell off. Kind of like FedEx recently announced that, hey, for up and coming quarters, they expect a slowdown. Well, then you can't really expect anytime soon that FedEx is naturally just going to begin to recover when demand and expectation is relatively low, right? That's going to be the same thing with an investment. It's not just on how it's doing today or this week or this month, but what is expected for the next up and coming quarters for this company. And on the day chart, I could see that, yeah, it's bullish. It could be forming a lower high here, especially if it breaks its pattern below the EMA, the moving average. We could potentially sell off to previous lows. So we'll see. I think it's too early to tell on this potential reversal, but it looks like it is showing signs of some progress on the upside. So again, out of everything out there, would this be at the top of my list? No. But I can see why you're paying attention to it. It's bullish. It's indicating signs of an uptrend. My only concern here that I want to bring up is I'm sure that if you're talking about Chipotle, your intention is probably to make money on the recovery, which I hope happens for you. But the only thing that I want to point out is this descending potential resistance. If we do end up getting rejected, and just because it was bullish before doesn't mean that it has to continue that way, right? Patterns tend to repeat themselves. They don't always have to. So we'll see if it ends up forming a lower high, lower low. So the thing that I would look out for on this is when it pulls back, does it hold above the moving average and the EMA on the day chart? If it begins to sell off and continues to sell off, then at that point, that could be showing signs of weakness and a potential lower high, which could mean more selling pressure is set to come. So CMG dropped off of from this play. Well, there's a series of things on what caused it to sell off. But yeah, for sure. All right, what else? Let's go ahead and do one or two more. What do you guys think? SOFI. So SOFI Technologies. On the day chart, a lot of consolidation. So if I were to ask you guys, if we were to look at SOFI, and we're looking at this on the day chart. So this is looking back all the way to 2022. Look at this, 2022. So out of every stock out there, you're saying that this is your favorite stock. And again, I'm not here to correct you or say that, no, you're wrong or you're right. All I'm here to say is if I were to ask you guys, is this a bullish stock or is this a bearish stock? Or is this a stock that's just trading sideways? For me, this is a stock that's just trading sideways. And remember, for a trader, for an investor, it's easier to make money when there's a clear direction of a stock. If it's consistently bullish, I can go long. If it's consistently bearish, I can go short. But as of right now, something like SOFI is just trading sideways, where in my opinion, it's not the most attractive. But again, if you do well with it, like I said, we're all wired in different ways. We can all see value in different ways. If you like buying into the rips and then selling at the highs, wait for it to dip, selling at the highs, wait for it to dip, selling at the highs, wait for it to dip. Again, you make your money how you see fit. There's so many different ways on how to make money in this market. All I'm saying is, again, this thing tends to trade sideways. I'm not the biggest fan of that. Direction is simply not in your favor, which just puts you in a riskier position. So I think that's just something that you should be aware of. And just like Mark is saying, a lot of consolidation there. So let's go ahead and do one more. So Walmart long-term. WMT. Isn't Walmart like incredibly bullish, but also overbought? So I'm really happy to see that you're talking about a stock that's incredibly bullish. I'm right there with you. I do believe Walmart is a long-term play. Just my opinion, I think it's too overextended. I think it's not a good enough deal where I like to buy things for a good deal to try to make money, right? I feel like if I buy into the hype here, I would really have to hope that our economy and that Walmart continues to do better for this stock to continue to thrive. I would rather buy Walmart when it's a little bit more distressed, because we know Walmart isn't, at least as of right now, it's not going anywhere, right? It's incredibly bullish, but it's incredibly overbought. So I think any form of retracement or pullback at least gives me a little bit more wiggle room and margin to make some money off of this. But I do believe that Walmart, again, due to its performance, I can see why it's so attractive, and I can see why you're talking about it, because direction is in your favor and it's forming higher highs and higher lows. The only other criteria that it's just not meeting is that it's not a good deal. It's extremely overbought, so the risk to reward ratio just might not be there. That's my criteria. That doesn't have to be yours, but that's all I would really pay attention to when it comes down to something like this. So, Ricky, what are your thoughts on the economy? Soft landing, hard landing, no landing? I don't know. Well, how about we end it with that question? I really like that question. So we talked about it a little bit during our LPP live trading sessions. And this is we're going to wrap this up anyway. So this is just one thing I wanted to share with you guys. The Federal Reserve started to cut interest rates. They cut interest rates 50 basis points. And the expectation for the next few meetings by the end of the year for 2024 is another 50 basis points. So naturally speaking, demand should pick up for everything. And I think that this is going to put us through another roller coaster of this inflation cycle, because you have to think about it. Inflation is currently under control. Housing prices have dropped a little bit, but not very much. Not enough to keep up with wages. Wages haven't really risen, right? So understanding that, at least from the people I speak to, and I can only speak from my experience, I'm hearing a lot of people are struggling to get jobs. People are graduating school and applying to so many different jobs, well qualified, and yet they are not getting jobs. I hear people applying to 20, 50, 100 different jobs are not getting it. So with that understanding, with the understanding that the Federal Reserve is now beginning to cut interest rates, when they cut interest rates, demand will naturally pick up on everything. So then wouldn't that make sense that if everyone just naturally begins to spend more money, then at that point, inflation will naturally begin to uptick again. So we are currently at that 2.5% inflation rate. It's just going to begin to uptick, which means that as the Federal Reserve begins to cut interest rates by the end of 2024 and then all of 2025, in about 9 to 12 months, we should see inflation naturally begin to uptick. And then at that point, it's too late. The Federal Reserve might need to pivot once again from cutting interest rates to pausing to potentially providing interest rate hikes. And then what, right? It's just this whole cycle over and over again that just seems to never end. And again, maybe that's just our economy. Maybe that's just what we need to continue to go through. But it seems like, again, because of how inflation is being tracked, it's only taking the last 12 months really into consideration. I don't think it would be much of a surprise that in the next 9 to 12 months, we see inflation begin to uptick. By that time, it's going to be too late for the Federal Reserve to really do anything. They're just going to have to pivot at that point and start raising interest rates to slow down the economy. And who knows, maybe they'll just turn on the printer and start handing out some stimulus checks, because now no one can afford anything and everything is too expensive. And my big concern with just everything it is that we have going on, right? We talked about the 2008 market crash. We talked about the the dot-com bubble. We've seen many times that when the Federal Reserve begins to cut interest rates, historically speaking, the last two times, there's been a trigger. It's not just that the Federal Reserve begins to cut interest rates and then naturally the market begins to crash, but there's always been a trigger, right? The dot-com bubble was, again, inflated internet companies. And then when it came down to the 2008 market crash, that was the housing bubble, right? The housing crisis. So what's going to be our trigger this time? I really think it could be war. I've never seen so many people so divided, so on edge. With everything that's going on in, overseas, I don't know. Sometimes people say that economies thrive during war times. I think that's a very sad reality that we live in, but we'll see, right? I'm here experiencing all of this with you guys a lot of the times for the first time. I know that there's been the 2008 crash, but I wasn't an adult at the time, and I definitely was not an adult in the 2000 dot-com bubble. So I'm trying to keep up with everything that's going on. I'm trying to do my part to stay informed. But from what I've understood, there's these triggers, and then those triggers really send the markets into, I don't know, just the closest thing that I can relate any of this to from my experiences, like the pandemic crash, right? I guess we didn't enter a recession according to one of the most recent revisions, but if you take into consideration in what happened from 2019 to 2020, and then the market went into this extreme sell-off within a very short period of time, that was something that I was experiencing for the first time. So I think it's scary because it's unknown territory, but that's any time that you look into the future, that's always what you feel, right? It's scary because you don't know. And every time that you look past is viewed as a missed opportunity. So I think that, with that in hindsight, all I'm looking forward to is if an opportunity does begin to present itself, that I'm reminded of that same motto, and that's again, to not be afraid to take advantage of opportunities if I can tolerate the time that it would take for the markets to recover. So that's what I'm looking forward to. I'm looking forward to just trying to be as prepared as I can, not because I think markets are going to crash, but I just want to make sure that I have a plan B just in case. So I'm taking it, again, week by week, month by month, just like many of you guys. And I hope that for those that are interested, can stay subscribed to our channel, and I will try to the best of my ability to keep you guys up to date with economic reports, earning reports, and any type of news that might influence the overall market in a positive or negative way. So I appreciate you guys taking time this Sunday and joining me. If you have any questions whatsoever, feel free to either message me via Discord or via Instagram, and that's all linked down below. And for those that want to tune on in, I do trade live every morning. If you're ready to tune on in, it's the second link in the description down below. And I do want to remind you that if you've been thinking about joining my LPP team, now would probably be a good time because prices will be jumping up $200 starting October 1st. So if you do sign up right now, it's a one-time payment, lifetime access. And again, it's the second link in the description down below. Like always, let's make sure that we end the year on a green note.